Hello, hello, hello. Hello to anybody out there. As far as I know, there's probably going to be almost nobody who ends up actually watching this live, but this is going to be a big boy. This is a week where we're going to go over every single team. I've actually taken notes because there's so much information to go over that I will be a lot more directed this time. This is this is a break out your popcorn, get a beer, sit down and enjoy type of video where we're just gonna give the whole league a run through. If you don't know shit about shit, this will be very informative for you. If you know everything, then you can have some laughs along the way as I shit on certain teams. But yeah, let's get into it. So this is like less than an hour, hopefully. All right, so first things first, let's talk about the like basically only trade that had any sort of value or mention before we get into the league overview. Uh, that trade was Darnell Mooney for Cole Kmet. Uh, and then this J. Roy trade where he basically just got a quarterback. Nobody cares. But Darnell Mooney for Cole Kmet. Darnell Mooney could end up being some sort of dynasty piece. I mean, he's had a great year so far. I really liked him in Chicago, where he was the number one wide receiver there, but was dealt with Justin Fields syndrome. So he's doing a lot better now under the tutelage of Kirk Cousins. Cole Kmet, on the other hand, despite Caleb Williams' shaky start, looking like he could end up doing some stuff this year. I mean, he every year kind of comes in, comes out, does his thing. There's a lot of options there, but he'll have some very big spike weeks. I mean, somebody's always going to be open on that team. But yeah, whatever trade. Matt gets tight end depth, Chris gets wide receiver depth, but not too deep. Okay, let's get into the overall league view. So I'm gonna start off by going over what in my opinion are the locked playoff teams, and then we'll have the middle ground teams, and then we will have the bottom of the barrel teams. We'll start at the top, which would be Drake and Bake, Matt. Um, he's chatting in the league saying, his team is very much alive, wasn't getting the credit that it deserved early on in the year. Um, you know, there were reasons for that. I listed them out, earlier on. Andrew's looking kind of dead. Garrett Wilson pretty quiet. Ayuk quiet. Waddle had Tua down. Deontay Johnson was quiet. No Andy Dalton. Um, there were, but his team has definitely turned it around. Lamar Jackson, I think he's QB1. Yeah, QB1. Obviously the best quarterback out there. I don't think it's even debatable at this point. And he's just going to continue to keep doing his thing. He's going to be great. With the turnaround that I'm talking about, Chuba Hubbard thought he was just going to be end up being a, just, you know, basically a piece that will help you bridge the gap between John Brooks, but he's performed very admirably. Probably, I would think, at least, carved out a role of 50%. And even if he goes to another team over the next year or two, I think there will be, some suitors. So he's not just going to be like a one and done hit sort of running back. Unfortunate for Matt to lose Ayuk for the rest of the season. I mean, not going to affect him too much at the current moment. He hasn't really been doing too much. I mean, anytime you lose a wide receiver like that, it's going to hurt. But, I think it will be okay for him, regardless. Jalen Waddle going to be looking a lot better once Tua comes back. That's either going to be this upcoming week or the week after. I predict that as long as Tua ends up being alive and not taking another hit, let's try not to dive headfirst into oncoming tackles, and maybe we'll be good. He also said there was an interview where he literally came out and was like, "I'm not going to wear a guardian cap." Kudos, dude. Seems like CTE's already taken its effect. I mean, what a fucking idiot. Like, what an idiot. But Waddle will, retain his value. He's going to come back. He's going to have some good, like, a good second half of the year. as will Tyreek Hill. Mark Andrews, his usage, I'm personally somewhat of a Mark Andrews hater. Um, when he was dead to rights, I was definitely, pumping my own tires a little bit, not in the chat or anything, but more just to myself. I'm like, yeah, I knew that fucking fraud was dead to rights. Like, he gets hurt a lot. He's kind of like he's an old 29 in my opinion. Lots of injuries. Um, Even though his usage hasn't been great over the last 3 weeks, he's been very efficient. He's definitely the first look in the red zone at this point. I would say is safe to say. And with Zay Flowers getting or maybe a high ankle sprain, something like that, he's about to get fed. I mean, Rashad Bateman has been doing stuff, which is crazy. But it will at worst it's going to be Rashad Bateman and him just going. I mean, for targets right now, he's going to get 7 to 8 if Flowers is out every week for sure. So that's solid, and he's got Cole Kmet as we talked about as a backup. Deontay Johnson alive. Also, some trade rumors around there. They've gone a little quiet recently, but former Slim Reaper Deontay Johnson, I have complete faith. He's a stud, but he's at the mercy of whoever's throwing him the ball. Nabbers was a huge get, obviously from pick 4. Probably going to end up being. I mean, I would think wide receiver 1, maybe next to Justin Jefferson, if not wide receiver 1 in dynasty value at the moment. I mean, he just looks like he's going to be an absolute god. Drake May, big overall pickups in the draft this year. I mean, despite the fact that Drake May is on the Patriots, who look like absolute dog shit, we all know this. Their weapons are disgusting. Their line is disgusting. He's put up 2 20-point games, and I think he's just going to be like that. It was a great trade for him. I think he just took out the garbage. I don't remember the exact trade details, but I remember that was like Keenan Allen, Dalton Schultz. Let's see. Is it in this year? Okay, Jerry Jeudy. I mean, obviously gave up a first for it, but got some good value out of the garbage there for sure. Next to that first round, I think that's a one trade for sure. With the way it's going, he's got two good running quarterbacks too. Anyway, with Russ coming back, good little playoff piece. We'll see how that all ends up shaking out. He also traded for Pacheco, which is like sneaky. Maybe you're not thinking about it, but he's going to be big down the stretch. No complications with surgery, as you can see. Even though I think they said that he had some tendonitis, or not tendonitis, like tendon damage, he's just going to be good. I mean, this expectation of him at week 9 feels very generous to me. I think he's much more going to be like a week 11, something like that. The Chiefs are 6-0. They have absolutely no reason to rush him back, but he will make his comeback, basically for the playoffs. And let's see that playoff schedule. We got I believe it's 15, 16, 17. Cleveland, Houston, Pittsburgh. Not ideal, but whatever. Pacheco, in my opinion, I mean, I think they're just going to re-sign him. He's a good piece. And I think as much as Matt has done a good job of, moving around, maneuvering his team, very strong starting lineup, very little depth, and almost no picks until 2028. So his flexibility is minimal, but he's clearly all in trying to make a push for basically the next 2-3 years. He's young enough that, maybe by 2028 he hasn't made any moves, but he's very much at the risk of injury. So losing Ayuk, like I said, thankfully he has depth at wide receiver. That's like where his most depth is. Running back, we'll see what ends up happening to him, but all you need is 2 starters. As long as they stay healthy, you're good. And I guess for him, that would be Etienne and Pacheco with like some dash of Chuba in there, maybe if he maintains 50%. But yeah, good overall start for Matt. I have him locked into playoffs for sure. 6-1 is going to be really hard for him to not make playoffs at this point, in my opinion. And I think he's in line for probably a bye. Sun God Supremacists, we aren't going to go super hard into Chris's team because he already has outside help, because he's the only team in the league with a second player. He's got Burrow and Chase cooking, one of the best stacks in the best stack in the league, actually. Amon-Ra St. Brown doing his damn thing. Najee, Arthur Smith is, when Arthur Smith is the offensive coordinator, you're guaranteed to see some screwy shit. And, Najee Harris basically getting as many carries as he does and as much work as he does is just a pure Arthur Smith move, if I've ever seen one. I mean, good efficiency over the last 2 games from him. 50% snaps, but he's actually breaking 100 yards. But God, dude, if you see this guy actually hit the hole, and I've seen him hit the hole with nobody in front of him for 20 yards. Guy literally cannot break a rush over 20, 30 yards. He has no pop. He's just always going to be a volume-based back at best. I'm a huge Najee hater. Fuck that guy. So bad. But, he does his thing for fantasy. I think he's the only running back over the last 3 years to have 1,000 rushing yards in each season. Jaden Reed, huge this year. Huge. Didn't really come out of nowhere, but his efficiency is always incredible. Jordan Love is looking like a true top 5 quarterback, and just the amount of passing that they do is really high. And Jaden Reed is very explosive with the ball in his hands, and this is a really low week for him, 3 points. We're onto probably this. To be able to pick up Brock Bowers now, in my opinion, probably most people's opinion, the tight end 1 in dynasty value, alongside Kittle, who's having a great season, and next to the Ayuk injury, probably going to get a lot more work. He's just George Kittle. He's always going to be good, but there's going to be games where he literally just blocks all game, and that's assuming he stays healthy. But picking up Brock Bowers, who I was huge on, if I didn't need as much QB help as I did, and didn't form the team the way that I was looking at it, which was QB, and my team's pretty solid, I can compete this year, then I lose the QB. When JJ, but I would have easily gone Brock Bowers. I was huge on him all year, and then I ended up trading Stafford and Wilson, and I knew what I needed to do to end up maybe starting a team and competing this year. But he's just going to be a god. I think he's going to be really good. And they trade Adams away. 14 receptions. I think he has a 33% minimum target share. He's just going to get absolute peppered. I'm not going to be surprised if I see him over 15 points every single week going forward. 20 maybe even, but most likely 15. Stafford, whatever. But yeah, I'm surprised Stafford even played another year. That's why I sold him last year. Who else you got? Jerome Ford, gone. Eckler. I respect Eckler. I think he's going to keep doing his thing. Rico, going to be replaced by Genty next fall. Elijah Moore, sneaky. Sneaky might be a nice little piece coming forward here this year. Hunter Henry also, actually, with Drake May as quarterback. Seems like he's getting fed a little bit. Back to the old Hunter Henry is our top option. So he's probably going to get, 6-7 targets a game at least. And he's going to do well with them with somebody who actually can get him the ball. But I think Elijah Moore is sneaky. Going to have an okay end of the season, especially, no more Deshaun Watson, that fucking bum. Oh, no. Uh-oh. I didn't look it up prior to this video, but I was wondering who had Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson, you might literally want to actually drop him from your squad at this point because he is karmic suicide. I think that if you have this guy on your team, just the universe is telling you that you are going to lose. Chris is lucky enough that that's his 3rd quarterback. I apparently did him a huge favor giving him Stafford, because if he had to play this guy every week, I don't know if he would be where he is right now. And not to mention, like I said, this is just karmic suicide. he like legitimately might want to end up trading him off the team. Or if you can even get him to be traded off the team, you might want to drop him. Unironically. All right, next. J. Roy. Also, I have Chris, again, I'll say, locked into playoffs. I think his team is good enough. He's going to be just fine. Enough of a lead. He's going to be good. All right, J. Roy. Like he said in the comments, he was a top point scorer this week, getting about 20 points from his actual quarterbacks, which I think, despite what everyone thought this year, everyone thought J. Roy maybe just going to sweep, whatever. He's got Richardson, Mahomes. They both suck. Crazy to think, but they both fucking suck. Anthony Richardson, you're going based off of a 2-game sample of last year. And prior to that, he played 14 total games of quarterback at a upper level. So not surprising to see him struggle. I mean, if you actually just watch these games, this guy, he can't hit the broadside of a barn. He's got all the talent in the world, but it's gonna have to be developed. Pajak is looking really good at the moment, unloading him for what he did, getting DJ Moore and DK Metcalf, two great wide receivers. DK being one of my favorites. I love DK. But yeah, Anthony Richardson sucks. And it's crazy to say, but Patrick Mahomes, I mean, if he had Rashee Rice and Marquise Brown and Xavier Worthy was like the wide receiver 3, I mean, we're maybe talking about Mahomes in a completely different scenario this year. But he doesn't. And he's literally droppable in redraft leagues, which is insane to say. But yeah, I mean he's struggling there at the QB position at the moment with and his backup is Derek Carr, who is just a fraud in my opinion. This right here, week 2, week 3, or week 1, week 2, what fraudulence. They played Carolina, Dallas, who obviously everyone knows has not been good as a defense over the last 6 weeks. And then he got hurt in classic Derek Carr fashion. After I watched him basically off his back foot chuck up prayers, interceptions like every week, watching this guy play makes me want to stick my head in the hole. I can't stand him. But having Chris Olave tied to him, which I know he does, but I don't know where he is. Maybe he's on his bench. Yeah. Kind of sucks because Olave is a fucking god. But his running backs are strong. Kamara, Barkley having an incredible season. Joe Mixon, obviously having a great season himself. Not a lot of people maybe saw him having the season that he's having. He's on a great offense, but he's still looking really good. What else do we got? The top teams I didn't do as much analysis on. Pittman, tied to Anthony Richardson. Romeo Dobbs, going to be a boomer bust week to week. Oh, I forgot he was on Marquise Brown. But yeah, solid team overall. He's gotten healthy. He went 5-2 while dealing with a lot of injuries. So I have J. Roy locked into playoffs with his team remaining as it is right now. QB play be damned, he'll be fine. All right, those are the three teams I have like 100% locked into playoffs. So on to the middle ground. We'll start with Cody. Cody, with a game in hand, not necessarily a lock for the playoffs in my opinion. He does get CMC back in week 10. He gets cut back probably this week. Nico back in the next couple weeks. He has Juwan Jennings maybe to fill in the meantime after the Ayuk injury. But overall, at wide receiver, Cody at the moment is very thin. He's starting Josh Palmer, who for once had a decent game. Xavier Legette, I'm a fan of, but, also just on the Panthers. So, they're going to have these games where he just goes 1.8, 2.9, 0. You know what I mean? So, I mean, he had to start little Jordan Humphrey. Wow. Yeah, you're in trouble when you're doing that. Evan Ingram's come back. Solid. He's going to be really good, I think. With BTJ and Kirk and all these options around him, he's going to be even more wide open over the middle than he was last year. Aaron Jones, big run. I think he had like a 50 or 60 something yard run last week that accounted for most of his points. But he's gonna be good as long as he can not do Aaron Jones things and get hurt. Jalen Hurts, I'm not concerned about. A lot of talk about that, but he's gonna be fine. Um, Will Levis, trash. Andy Dalton, looking like trash at the moment. We got Zach Moss, sure. I mean, he's losing the backup. He's losing the job to Chase Brown as we speak. At least he has Ty Chandler if he does lose Aaron Jones. But on the way home, I did end up hearing a rumor / report that the Rams are actually looking to trade Cooper Kupp. And they're asking for a second, and they said they would end up taking money off his salary for anyone that was looking to buy him. So, Cooper Kupp, looking, I don't know if I like that for him. Personally, if I had to think about it, I'd put him on maybe 3 or 4 teams. You have obviously the best outcome, which is the Chiefs. I think that's a real, actually, possibility because nobody in the AFC wants to trade the Chiefs a wide receiver. The Rams are in the NFC, and they clearly just want to get rid of him and get a second round pick and start rebuilding. They gotta be picking a QB this year. They're gonna use Puka as their number one. I mean, I don't know if they're actually gonna get rid of Kupp. That's just the rumor that's out there. I believe that if you do this, you can already see it. Rams making veteran wide receiver available via trade. Which, with him and Stafford, they're a very dynamic duo. Stafford is a wide receiver one god maker. And I don't know if you can project him as to be Cooper Kupp like he has been in the past, because so much of his scoring is based off of volume. And if he ends up going to like one of the 4 teams I said, I only listed one, but Chiefs, Steelers, those are my top 2 for sure. Ravens, which would be surprise, but that would be pretty fire, and I think they could do it. And then maybe Tampa Bay. That's the 4th like long shot one that I have right now, because they just lost Godwin, and they could try to catch fire in a bottle with Kupp. I think they got enough room on the salary cap to make that happen. But yeah, Chiefs, I could see him being the Rashee Rice role. Maybe he just stays and does what he does. Overall, I, like everyone else, hope he does not go to the Chiefs, because fuck the Chiefs. And we don't want them to get any wide receiver. They're 6-0 without any, so they don't need any wide receiver help. And aiding and abetting them is tantamount to jail time. So, yeah, that is Cody's team. I mean, like I said, he's getting CMC and Nico back, so he'll be strong down the back of the season. Kenneth Walker is looking like a true RB1. I mean, look at these numbers. He's a god. As long as he stays on the field, which is his one knock. I mean, look at that. He's only getting 70% of the snaps, and he's putting up these kind of numbers. 50% of the snaps, he's getting 23 points. The guy just goes off. And, from what I heard in the preseason, the coach loves him, sees him as a 3-down back. He's going to be really good going forward. I mean, I don't know what that means for Cody, because ultimately I think this might be his last year, possibly, trying to compete. I mean, he could be looking to sell off at the end of the year, which, Kenneth Walker would be a great piece to get. But yeah, that's Cody. I didn't have much on his back end of the schedule. I know he plays me, which we'll see what ends up happening there. But I expect him to have Kupp, Nico, and CMC back for that game, so I should stand no fucking chance. He does have an upcoming game that is very losable versus Dave. He's got Rough Riders, who we're going to get to next. He has Dave. Who's he got here? Allied Andy. We'll get to some of these teams later and what I think of them. But Allied Andy, where's the one with Dave? He's going to probably lose to Chris there. is it? Ooh, lost there. Where is it? Oh, there it is. There's me. Yeah, I should lose that. I got a bunch of people on buy there. And then he has Payjack, and I thought he had Dave, but I guess not. But yeah, his team should be a lot stronger down the back half. And with a 5-2 start, I project him to most likely make the playoffs. But you never say never until we see what happens basically over the next 2 weeks. Rough Riders. Rough Riders. I took a look at this team. Um, he had an absolutely brutal Monday. Um, what did he end up losing this past week? Yeah, he ended up losing he should have won this game versus Allied Andy. Baker went off for 33 and Bucky Irving had 17 points. I mean, did he start Debo? I guess he started Debo. And he won with a 0 point wide receiver. But that doesn't matter when you lose Mike Evans so early. You lose Chris Godwin for the long haul. Monty got hurt. He just had injuries up the wazoo on Monday, which is really, really tough for him. I project Mike Evans to be out this upcoming week. He could struggle a lot further going from here on out because hammy injuries, they're really slow healers and they can be very debilitating. So he literally actually, you saw Nico had a hammy injury. They put him on IR. That's like the worst case scenario for Rough Riders, who I think 4-3. So he's only in the playoffs by one win at the moment. Lost 3 players this week. Gets Jonathan Taylor back most likely over the next week or two, but gets Nick Chubb back, which is good. And there's no Watson there, so he could end up becoming more effective. He does get Tua back, who's sitting on his IR. And but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see him make a move for some wide receiver depth. He's gonna be he's gonna be at mercy of kind of what ends up happening with his wide receiver room. That's gonna be the story for him. And I don't think he has a lot of maneuverability beyond players. He's got Thielen. He could have Thielen come back. I like Thielen. But that's probably not going to be for a little bit. Again, hamstring injury. So 2 seconds, he can make some moves. He could probably get something to hold him over in the meantime. But yeah, I think that these are the people that are on the fringe. I think that him and Cody and Diagos, in my opinion, probably all. Cody more likely than the other two, but I project them out to most likely make the playoffs. Rough Riders, I don't think his schedule mattered too much to me because if he beats me this week, which he certainly could, if Debo plays. If Debo doesn't play, he could be in trouble, man. Or sorry, not Debo, Mike Evans. He has running backs, but I guess he plays Trey Palmer or Jacoby. Jacoby could come in and maybe do an admirable job. Judy with no Watson, sure. But, that sounds like a wide receiver 3 with Watson or Myers sounds like a fringe playoff team to me, personally. Who's he got? Jurassic Park. Maybe gets Cody back before, all his players come back. He's got Diagos. Big game. Looks like he's got people on bye this week. Chubb, Gino. He's probably going to have Tua back at that point, so no real damage there. Let's see. He's got Payjack, and which I'm going to go into Payjack in a little bit. Not as free a win as some people might think going forward. And then, who else you got? Dave on what looks like a massive bye week for him. London, Chase Brown, Shakir, Pitts, like half his team on bye. So he could definitely make it work. If he beats me this week and he's got, 2 more wins in his belt, I think that's going to be good enough to make the playoffs. I think the playoff team, especially with his points, is going to be most likely 7-7, maybe even 6-8. I'm not sure if 6-8 will get you in really, but 7-7 is definitely projecting to be probably a playoff team. The next team that we want to talk about is Digos. I kind of baited this when I said the video like clickbaits, but it's like contender or pretender. Um, as he pointed out in the chat, he had an absolutely brutal loss on Monday to Mike Aarons. Um, you know, don't get too much more of a bad beat than the guy starting one quarterback that's Daniel Jones and putting Rashad White, who has been an absolute liability this year, in your flex, and he looks like he literally doubles almost his or scores in one game almost the entire points that he scored all year in one game. And then he had Bateman. Hold up. Hi.
Hi.
I gotta say goodbye, but you're heading home?
Yes.
Okay. Love you.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. So he has Bateman, who now with Zay Flowers out could end up being like a legitimate piece for like a couple weeks. I'm being very generous there. But yeah, we'll talk about Mike a little bit later. But back to Digos, who actually we should just talk about this. You know, a year and a half into the league, he finally sets a team name, and within that time, I believe he's put in the chat twice that he's had bad beats. Unlucky? I don't know, but we'll see. I don't even know what he's going for with Digos. Maybe I just am ignorant. I don't know what he's going for there, what it means. But that loss could end up being a legitimate difference maker for the playoffs. He only has one win up on playoff position at the moment. And, that would be heartbreaking. Similar, in fact, to Matt last year, who I think missed playoffs by one game where he missed, like, I don't know, like 2 points because he didn't start someone or, like, was like a point something victory. Those ones hurt the most, and you hate to look back on those. But if you look at his team overall, it's strong. We love Jaden Daniels, but he's doing what a lot of people probably projected Jaden Daniels to do at the beginning of the year, which is probably, I mean, in my opinion, I had him being effective. At least a floor game because he's going to run a lot. But because he's going to run a lot, he's the king of not going down, and he got smashed. We'll end up seeing what that means for him. I think he'll probably be fine. I don't know if he's going to play this week. He might play next week. But, yeah, kind of hurts there. Good team. Tyreek Hill going to end up turning it around once Tua comes back. Amari Cooper with a breath of fresh air getting traded to Buffalo. I think you're going to see a lot more games like this out of Amari Cooper going forward when he's actually getting thrown the ball within 10 yards of his hands. Pickens with Russ, I project to be possibly a wide receiver one going the rest of the way. I mean, he's going to be a high-end wide receiver, too, in my opinion, because those deep balls that were coming from Fields are actually going to be coming from a guy who's very well known for his deep balls. And not to mention, he's going to be looking to pass much more around the end zone as opposed to Fields, who, if he doesn't see anything in the first 1 second, he's going to tuck and run. So I think his wide receivers are going to be just fine. Kareem Hunt, I mean, going to fall off once Pacheco comes back in the later part of the season. But Tank Bigsby could be that guy. I mean, I don't know what is going to happen with the Jacksonville backfield because in both games that Bigsby has ended up playing as like the lead back, I mean, or from when ETN either got hurt or whatever, he's really showed out, done well. I mean, it is versus Indy, it is versus New England. But I think that, he's really looking to earn himself like a 50 time share there for sure. And I mean, he's been unarguably the more effective of the two runners. So, that could be an option for him down the line. But I mean, until Jaden Daniels comes back, he will be a one QB team. But at least in the meantime, he will have Jordan Mason. That's probably going to go away week 10. Who else has he got? Puka. Yeah, let's not forget about Puka. Especially if Cooper Kupp ends up getting traded. I mean, we all saw at the beginning of last year what Puka was doing when he was like basically the sole target of Matthew Stafford. 20 target games, 14 15, 18 target games, he's just going to get absolutely fed and could just push right into that Cooper Cup role. I mean, he could end up just coming out and just being straight up a wide receiver one. And on a team like this, already three really good wide receivers that I project to have good rest of season outlooks. He's going to be doing pretty good in that wide receiver out front. I mean, he does have a big hole in the roster with Mo Alley Cox. I mean, he is slumming it with Mr. Munt. So, you know, tight end 35. That's his starter. So, he's basically punting one position, but his wide receivers might be strong enough to get him over the hump. Losing this game this week, really brutal because the next upcoming game, I will talk about a little bit later, but it's probably the biggest game I would say of the year for playoff contention. So yeah, good for him. I mean, he is number 6 right now. I don't know if I like a lot of the pieces on his team, but I didn't know if they were all going to project this so well this year. 9-13. He's middle of the league in terms of scoring. Next team is Andy. I like Andy. My notes on him are that despite his best efforts to tank for next year, he's actually having a good year. On the back of like good QB play, he's really being like a plucky team. Josh Allen's QB4 and Baker. Nobody projected him to do this, but is QB2. He was absolutely going ham. I mean, we could end up seeing that shift a little. Chris Godwin was a large part of that. But I think that, and if Mike Evans actually like goes on IR or something, you're going to see a pretty drastic change there. You could see Andy in free fall here because he either goes for like 140 or he drops like 80 points. But I mean, you have Bucky Irving, Tyrone Tracy, both having great rookie years, but good performance out of Rashad White. Bucky Irving, I'm not as scared about. He's going to at least get 50-50 work, I think, the rest of the way through. And you can pray for a Rashad White injury. He could be a legitimate RB2 at least. Tyrone Tracy, he really showed his skills. Very off game for the Giants. So, still had 6 points in a very horrible game. 67% snap share. I think that that's really what you're going to be looking at, a 50-50 backfield with him. But he is effective, and he will get catches because they're going to dump it out of the backfield because that they're either passing it to Malik Neighbors, 5-yard outs to Wan'Dale Robinson, or dumping it to the back. That's basically the Giants' offense. Let's see, what's he got? He has Gibbs. Like I said, Andrew is going to be a plucky team. He's scrappy. He's going to show up every now and again, drop 140, 150, 160 on you. Deebo Samuel's going to be the number one option out of San Fran, and they're going to feed him. And when Deebo Samuel's healthy and he gets the ball, he just produces. It is what it is. He always has. His only knock has been that he's injury prone. He's got an illness right now. I don't personally see that lasting very long for him. I don't know what that even means. But he started him this past week, I believe, even though he was not starting. And I don't remember what happened. I think he won. But let's see what else we got for notes on him. Oh yeah, he's got TJ Hawkinson coming back, so he's going to get some good points there. I think Hawk will come in. I think Hawk, with the way that the Vikings are passing the ball, he could just go straight. Like, he could end up coming in halfway through the season and still end up being like tight end 8, tight end 7 if they use him like how they usually do. He could just end up going nuclear. But we never know what's going to happen with that, especially with the tight end premium. It's very nice for a guy who actually sees targets, with tight ends being what they are this year. But yeah, he's going to have spike weeks. He has an outside chance at playoffs, in my opinion, especially with Gibbs, quarterback play, Lazard being Lazard somehow, Christian Kirk having his ups and downs, but he's got a solid team. And, I guess it'll largely depend on Baker and a couple pieces, but he's not going to be rolled over, I don't think. Some weeks he will, some weeks he won't. My team, I personally am legit scared that there's a chance that I can make playoffs. I'm currently the number 2 team in points for, or max points for, so I'm projected for the second pick by about 40 points over Andy at the moment, with no QB2. So, but somehow, despite having no QB2, I somehow have managed to win 3 games, which I probably never should have won. I mean, I beat Pajak. That was one of my wins, but my other 2 wins should never have happened. I beat J Roy when his entire team was basically gone. I beat Corey, who we'll get to in a little bit. But basically, I have a lot of upcoming winnable games, which is versus Rough Riders with his team very hurt. Like I said, I project Mike Evans to be out, so he's going to have to throw like Jacoby or Judy in his spot. And my team has performed fairly admirably, week to week. I get the off occasion 90 something, but like I do have potentials for 140, 150, 120, 130, like anyone in that range when everyone kind of does their thing. I didn't have Swift last week, so that affected that. Tank Dell had 0 points. So if you really put those 2 in there, you're looking at much more at like 110, 120, probably realistically. I have upcoming games with Pajak. I have Andy. I have Rough Riders, like I said. So those are 3 very winnable games. I have 3 bottom half teams and 2 fringe playoff teams because I played Daigo, I think, in week 14. No, I played Pajak the last week, which, I mean, if I'm 1 game out of playoffs, I mean, that could be really scary for a lot of people. I played Daigo week 13. So he's going to probably need to secure playoffs, I would think, by that point. Or else he's going to maybe be in a win and in scenario. Same thing with Rough Riders. Where's Rough Riders? Am I missing? Am I just blind? Oh, and he's got Nier. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll end up seeing what happens. I personally think that I really shouldn't make playoffs. I have an outside source that I use that basically projects me to make the playoffs about 20%. This number varies greatly week to week, so not much to take from it. But I do have an outside chance of making playoffs, even though I would love the number 2 or 3 overall pick in this upcoming draft. If I end up making playoffs, that basically means that Dave and Corey are also not making playoffs. I highly doubt they're going to be able to climb the 3 win gap to make that difference, over that time period. Because, like I said, I probably have at least 2 to 3 winnable games coming up. And that would project my CD trade to be probably something like the 5th pick, the 6th pick, and the 7th pick, which is not bad either. I would be pretty happy with that as well. I mean, I originally was praying, hoping that I was going to be bottom of the league, which I kind of am. 2nd pick, while maybe Corey or Dave made playoffs. When I made that trade, that was my projection. I projected Corey actually to make playoffs when I did do that, and I figured there was an outside chance Dave or Corey possibly missed it. But 5, 6, 7, I wouldn't be upset about it. 2, I mean, currently I'm projected for 3 picks inside the top 6, which would be incredible. I'd be very happy with that. I think that's a win for sure, even when trading a player like CD, especially with the way he's performed this year. But yeah, we'll end up seeing what happens. My team is just scrapping wins together, playing good defense, and it seems like my opponents either dealing with injuries or making bad start decisions. But when it comes to all this, the next 2 weeks, I think overall are going to be the largest litmus test for a lot of these teams, and it's also going to end up being very telling who I think is going to make the playoffs and not make the playoffs over the next 2 weeks. There's a couple really big matchups. The next team, we are now in the bottom of the barrel, aka the last 3 2 and 5 teams, who, as of this moment, are 2 wins out of the playoffs with 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 7 games to go. So they're going to need some help for sure when it comes to making the playoffs. And that is Corey and Dave. But we'll start with Dave. Dave, when I look at his team, I say I have no clue how his team is not in playoff contention, while mine somehow is. I mean, losing obviously Rashid Shaheed and Rasheed Rice, the two Rashids, which is kind of funny, makes the most sense. I mean, that's got to be the main reason you look at his team the way it is right now. Those are huge losses with the way that they were performing this year. I mean, he does have four very winnable matchups on the back half of the schedule. He has me and him. That game could be a playoff determiner. Who knows? Could be important. Um, he has Cody, I believe, in week 9. No, okay, he has Cody in week 10. No, he has Cody in week. Does he have Cody this week? Oh, he has Cody this week. So Cody with no Nico, no CMC, maybe has cutback. So he's facing a weakened Cody's team. So he has a good chance of bringing out the win this week. And then, like I said, he's got me, he's got Near or Mike Aarons, and he has Pajak. So that's like possibly 3 pretty easy wins as long as his team performs. So he could, that's 5-5, and then he'd have to make something happen in the other games. But if we give him the Cody win, that's four wins, and that puts him in the positive. And then he just has to fight out through, let's see, Digos, who's going to be in a playoff fringe spot. So if he wins that game, that's a huge swing for him. 5 wins and knocking off one of the fringe playoff teams. And then week 14, he has J-Roy, which is quite unfortunate. So, he could be in a winning in at the end of the season right there. I mean, he has 4 to 5 very winnable matchups. So he could end up getting in with what I said, 7-7 might be making the playoffs. But, other than that, if you actually look at the team, little analysis on the team, you know, there's a lot to like here. Obviously, we've all kind of sang the praises of Dave's team at this point. Kincaid looking a little soft comparative to what I projected him out to be, but he does have Pitts. And we all know the bomb that he's going to drop in the next year. I mean, look at this. Oh my lordy. 3 picks in the top 2 rounds this year, and five five first next year. That's just fucking insane. When you look at this team and what he's projecting out to be, I mean, I'm not going to project out too far, but that's just an insane amount of fucking picks and maneuverability, flexibility. He could easily go the Corey route, buy like one of the best players in the league for 2.5, 3 picks. You know what I mean? And still have just a disgusting amount left over. We'll end up seeing it when we see it, because despite the fact that Dave has all these things, he hasn't made any noise yet. The team, like I said, is 2-5. Unlucky with some injuries for sure. I think he should have been a playoff team this year, but we'll see if he ends up making it. And my projections, out of all the 3 teams that's left, either me, Dave, and Andy, if one of us is going to usurp the number 6 spot, it's going to be probably me or Dave, unfortunately for me. But I project Dave to probably win that. It all depends on, probably, like I said, my matchup with him in the upcoming weeks. All right. The next team, Corey. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. The story for Corey is, in my opinion, paralysis by analysis. I don't think with Corey's team he should ever have a 2-5 record with this team. I mean, he literally hasn't won a game since week 3. How is that possible with this lineup? I mean, it's absolutely crazy. But like when you dive into it a little bit, it's basically a combination for him of getting unlucky with opponents overperforming week after week. I mean, he's also done himself a huge disservice starting the wrong players at the wrong times. Um, you know, I don't know. There is definitely some fault there. Not all on his head. Some of them have gone unlucky. But when you look at things like he's switching between Laporta and Kraft and basically whiffing week to week, with that start. Um, not playing Goddard, who's been playing pretty fucking well. Um, Bad buy timings for his running backs. That's like the only reason that he lost to me. He couldn't start HN or Williams, and he had to start a bunch of bums. And his team underperformed that week, and he fucked up the tight end, I believe, that week. Or he started. Oh no, he actually started Ridley when he had 8 targets and basically came out and said, "Will Levis sucks cock. I need more targets." And they were like, "Hey, you had 8." He was like, "Nah, I fucking didn't." But he started Ridley over Lockett that week. Lockett's been great this year. I mean, I don't think he's seen his maybe he's seen his starting lineup once. I think he's like a 10-point player a week. Um, this past week he started Josh Downs while Anthony Richardson is back. I mean, I think that is just questionable in general, especially with the other options that he has. And on top of that, he had the Cowboys on bye there that week, which also led to losing out on points. And I think he lost by 20. He starts either Cowboys players. See, that's a win for him. So, a lot of unlucky shit, a lot of uh, self damage here for Corey. It's kind of like watching a car accident. Just watching like arguably probably the top 2 talent team, in my opinion, over the last at the beginning of the season, just not win a game since week 3. I mean, I projected when Jordan Love was out. Oh, I'm like, okay, maybe he won't win some games. There's a chance like he could start off like 2-4 sort of thing. And I was like, okay, that's my ideal scenario for picks with Dave and everything. So one person, either Dave or Corey, ends up making missing playoffs for our pick trade, and then somehow they both are not in the playoffs, which I did not project. But having said all that, Corey does still have like an outside chance of playoffs if his team performs and he does well enough. I mean, my site that I said that I use 8% for him to actually make the playoffs, which is not zero. But if you look a little deeper, he'll definitely have to earn it. I mean, he with the 6 or 7 weeks that he has left. I mean, he definitely has some weeks that he's definitely going to win. But I think personally, he's probably going to have to win out with the way that some of these teams are looking. And he's got to get 3 good wins against the top of the league: Matt, Chris, and J. Roy. And the one note that I wanted to make about next or this upcoming week is, in my opinion, this is probably the most important game of the entire schedule for anybody looking to make playoffs, which is this week. You have Corey versus Digos. I mean, he's projected to win. This is such a Corey move. Always projected for about 140, 150. It just doesn't come to fruition or he gets banged on. I mean, Tyreek Hill at 19 projection is definitely them saying that Tua comes back. I mean, like I outlined, his receivers are filthy. Um, and one thing that I kind of haven't mentioned, I think I don't forget what his options are, but I'll talk about it a little bit more at the end. But yeah, Achan, Wilson, Diggs. I mean, they all got pretty good matchups. CD could get shut down again in San Francisco. I don't know. Um, you know, it looks okay. It looks good to me. I mean, it's gonna be a banger. This is arguably the most important win of the season because if Corey wins this, you move Digos to 4-4. Like I said, he has not a super easy schedule going forward, and Corey moves up to 3-5. He's 1 win out of the playoffs. I mean, if he loses this, this is a must-win game for him. He will be out. That 8% will go to 0, and he will have missed the playoffs with the team that he's looking for. Trading 3 picks for CeeDee Lamb, trading for Dak Prescott, getting rid of the QB2, unfortunately, for Dak Prescott at the time. And I mean, it's just tragedy, pure tragedy, Shakespearean tragedy for Corey. But yeah, that'll be one to watch, and I'm gonna be watching. Okay, so now we're at the almost guaranteed draft picks, in my opinion. Corey's almost there, but these are the guaranteed. These guys aren't making the playoffs. I don't care what happens, unfortunately, but that's Nier and Pajak. We'll start with Nier. Obviously, the most important thing when it comes to Nier is he is basically playing the worst defense in the league. The average points against is 925 for everyone in the league. He is currently 200 points above that. Nothing you can do about that, unfortunately. That is just actually being unlucky. And to be fair, he had a lot of good showings in the early part of the schedule. 140. What do you get here? I mean, kind of weak there, but 130, solid. 140, 140. I'm popping off on him. Like, that shit's just unlucky. Like, I really think a couple games go the other way. His team plays a little bit better defense. And, he's probably on the outside range here of the playoffs with me. I mean, I'm probably not in the playoff picture at all. Andy is and him are probably battling for that fringe spot at the moment. It's pretty unfortunate, but, I'm not. I mean, there's not much to say about the team at this point. I mean, he is starting Daniel Jones. He's got Caleb on bye this week or on bye last week. I mean, Caleb's definitely coming into his own, in my opinion. I think he's had a couple really strong performances the last couple of weeks, yeah. And I think a lot of that is based off run end. He's getting out, running the ball. But also, I think a little comfortability. But that is against the worst teams in the NFL. So take that with a grain of salt. Bryce Young, poof, I mean, I'm sure he got trade offers for this guy at the beginning of the season. I'm sure he's fucking hitting himself over not taking those. Um, but thankfully for everyone, myself included, who tried to trade for him. But I'm sure there's other people besides me that did it. He that didn't work out for him. But Sam Darnold did. But then he traded him away. I mean, I get it. He got, I think, a first for him, which is absurd in my opinion. Going back to that trade, um, but I think that's with the built-in value that ideally Sam Darnold gets a starting job next year, which I think will be likely. Somebody's going to pay him. Is it going to be the Vikings? I absolutely do not think so. I think that there's a chance, but he's going to have to take a discount to play for the Vikings. And if I'm him, this is your last chance to kind of get some money, man. I'd go to a different team. Probably, I mean, he's just going to have to go somewhere that needs help. He already went to Carolina, so he can go in there. But I'm not going to project too much out about Sammy D. But, yeah, like I said, he's got some pieces. Marvin's just been starving. Starving Marvin is, I think, what a lot of people are probably about to call him. Besides basically one or two good weeks, like he's really just not been there. I think that's a lot more to say about the Cardinals and what they want to do as a whole. Kyler Murray has never been a distributor for the most part. When it comes to statistics, he's always been much more of a 20-point because he runs quarterback. I've had him in previous years. He rarely throws for more than 2 touchdowns a game. Very rarely. So that caps Marvin's upside somewhat, but it's Marvin Harrison. He's got talent. He's going to be just fine, I think, in the long run. But back to Mike's team as a whole, as it is right now. I believe this week, he is starting 3 tight ends. Oh, he changed his lineup. It looks like since I looked at it earlier. He's starting 2 tight ends, Freiermuth and Ertz. I mean, not horrible. Before, when I looked at it, my point was going to be, if you're starting 3 tight ends, I mean, it is what it is. You know what you're looking at here. It was, I think, likely Ertz and Freiermuth. But yeah, I think personally for him, he's done a good job scoring for the most part over the year. 922. Good amount below the next couple people like me, Andy, Pajak, by the bottom. So I think he's looking at a third or fourth overall pick this year, which is not too bad for him. I don't know what does his picks look like. 2 firsts this year, 1 for Chris, gonna be a late pick, most likely, and a 4th for him. Couple seconds, Cody probably playoff, and 204. I mean, so he's going to get some good depth help this year for sure. I mean, next year, 3 seconds, including myself in a first. He's gonna turn it around. Oh, did he have 2027 first? 2027 first. So he's like looking good over the next like 2-3 years to build that team up. Could be competing in 2026 or 2027. Um, but that's kind of just where he's looking at the moment. Unfortunate that it didn't work out for him this year. And then the last team is Payjack, Mr. Tank himself, Mr. Tankorama, putting up a whopping 62 points, I believe, 60 points this past week. That would be the second time this year that he's lost by over 95 points to a team. Um, After this week, guaranteed to be the number one pick in the draft for the second year in a row. I was putting up a decent fight for a little bit. Somehow I'm 3-4 and was second and was beating him for a little bit. But, uh, that's out the fucking window. Payjack's number one. So he's gonna have his little pick of the litter. I mean, I don't know where he's gonna go. I know he's talked about running back help. So, Mr. Genty, or maybe he just wants to take the most valuable player on the board, which could end up being maybe Shadur, maybe Cam Ward. I don't know, but that's kind of what he's looking at next year. But I also know that Payjack, after last year, there's no ruling out that he might trade back again. But this year, little different. I believe he has five. No, he has 2 first-round picks. Natario, who's looking like a late playoff pick. His own, which is the 101, the 201, and then whatever Dave ends up being, which could end up being 201 or 204 to 206, probably something like that. And then next year he's got some good pieces to kind of just keep building. Yeah, he's on the way up. And one thing to note about Payjack's team that I kind of described when we were talking about other teams at the throughout the whole presentation here is I believe that you're going to see um, Payjack not be as free of a win as you might think that he has been so far this year. I think, Payjack has had his troubles this year, obviously, just due to what's going on with his team. DJ Moore not there. I forget what he has for a quarterback. What is his quarterback? I know he has Stroud, but Bo Nix, who's performed okay. Traded for Sammy D. He's going to do okay, but here's what a lot of people might be missing when it comes to Payjack this upcoming year. He's about to get 3 really solid, in my opinion, players to start through the rest of the year. He's going to get Ricky Pearsall, Mr. Many Men, Mr. Brian Robinson wannabe. He's going to get him back. And now with Ayuk out, I would say he's guaranteed. He's at least going to be the wide receiver 3. He could end up taking the Jawan Jennings role. Jawan could end up being the wide receiver 3, and Pearsall could be the wide receiver 2. But he's going to see what he got out of that. And Pearsall was a great player coming into the draft. He made Anthony Richardson look good. So if that tells you anything, I think that's where you're going to be looking. That's one player. He's going to get Jonathan Brooks in there. Jonathan Brooks is going to be playing the Carolina Panthers. I don't know how fast they're going to bring him on since they're fucking horrible. And Chuba's been doing well, but if he just fits right in, they want to see what they got. He could get some good usage. He could end up being very usable. He's going to be a starter for Payjack based off what I'm looking at here. Jonathan Brooks is 100% going to be a starter. So it'll be probably Charbonnet and having an off game, 1.9 Charbonnet. Even though I love Kenneth Walker, he's performed admirably. I think he's still going to get used in the passing game, but looking tough over the last 2 weeks. But I rate Charbonnet somewhat, and I think Brooks, gives him at least 2 starting running backs, or 2 running backs that are willing to start, and then sneaky. Well, first off, he loses Jay Williams for two weeks, which blows for him. But he does get him back, or PED. He might miss 4 weeks. I don't remember, but they just came out with the fact that He 2 games, 2 games for performance enhancing substances. Yeah. So he loses that, gets DJ Moore back here. Christian Watson, whatever, he's going to do his thing every now and again. Um, but he gets one of my sneaky guys that I really like, um, Jalen McMillan. Even with Chris Godwin playing that whole game, they lost Mike Evans, right? He gets 8 targets, 60% of the snap share. And then look at him earlier in the year, 83, 70, 89. I think you're going to be seeing very similar numbers to that for Jalen McMillan, except he's actually going to get thrown the ball now. I think he was very respectable at Washington, probably one of the sleepers of the draft, in my opinion. And he could end up being a factor, especially with Godwin out for the year. I mean, you're looking at 3 players that Paycheck did not have before put right into the starting lineup. You got also Demario Douglas, who's not going to have this every time. I mean, I think he's more likely to have in between this week and this week, probably much more like week 5, where he's going to be probably like a 10-point player going forward, I would think, most of the time, with Drake May as his quarterback. Um, but yeah, he's building. I think that, like I said, he's not going to be a free out with Sam Darnold, Stroud, Metcalf, Moore, McMillan probably as his wide receiver 3, Christian Watson and Demario Douglas. Like he's not going to be free, as some people might think he is, especially later in the season here. Um, and then obviously in the long term, he has good picks to try to build up around him. He could end up getting someone like Genty. So he'll have like something like John Brooks, Genty next year as his starting wide receivers. Metcalf, Moore. You know, he has a tool. He has a late pick with Matt. I don't really know what to project out there. Maybe Egbuka. Um, but like could grab a wide receiver out there. He's gonna look a lot more solid next year, in my opinion, after these picks. But if he does go quarterback, I can completely understand. Shadur is a fucking goat. All this talk of him being not the number 1 overall pick / moving to the second round was just pure blasphemy. I mean, anybody who actually watches the Colorado games understands that this guy puts that team on his fucking back. Him and Travis Hunter. I mean, Travis Hunter obviously gets his flowers, but just watch this guy play the game. He's gonna be good. But yeah, I think he's gonna be doing a lot better, and that's kind of everyone that we talked about so far. That's everyone in the league. My opinions on their possible ability to make playoffs, their remaining schedule, their team building, and everything that's kind of going forward. Maybe projecting a year or two, depending on the team. But yeah, I think that's what we're all looking at. The the main thing that I wanted to discuss last, like I said, upcoming matchups that are most important. Corey and Daigo this week. Huge, 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 huge game. You got the Sun God Supremacists and Mahomes. This is most likely going to be a bye game. So whoever wins this, very likely to get these one of the buys. I think Matt might have one of the buys locked up, but it's going to be probably between these 3 teams to get the buy, and this is a huge game. Let's see. Oh yeah, the last thing I wanted to talk about, yes, that maybe people aren't thinking about. Week 14 buys. This is ridiculous. If you actually look at the last week before the playoffs, these are the teams that are going to be on bye. As you can tell from me going through the teams, this is going to affect a lot of people. Look at these teams: Ravens, Texans. I mean, fucking Patriots, whatever. Commanders. I mean, really, the only people who are relevant there are like Brian Robinson, McLaurin, and Daniels. But the Ravens and Texans are just huge losses for some people. For people like Corey, I mean, if he doesn't get, I almost don't see a path to the playoffs for him at this point, because he's going to be losing Diggs, he's going to be losing Josh Downs, he will be losing, I mean, at least those guys. I forget who else he has. But Ravens, so this is for Matt. Matt could end up being in. I mean, not a lot of trouble. He does have Drake May, but Drake May is not Lamar Jackson. Um, Rough Riders, as I said, possible fringe playoff team. I think he's the person with Derrick Henry. Yep, he is Derrick Henry. I mean, but he does have a wealth of backs at the in his team. He has Chubb, Montgomery, Mostert, Jonathan Taylor, so he could survive. But just something to keep in mind. I think that this could end up having a huge effect on people and what could end up being a down to the last week situation. Um, so just something to monitor. But lastly, there was a little bit of talk of trade in the chat this upcoming day. I don't think we've had, the league has been very quiet for the last like 3, 4 weeks. The occasional trade here or there. Let's see, that was, I mean, really the only trade of substance practically was, I mean, in my opinion, this, which was Sam Darnold and Near for a first. Every other one, kind of whatever. I mean, this is an okay trade. Conklin, whatever, just kind of a bunch of pieces for Gino. But yeah, basically not a lot of trade news over the last like 4 weeks, 3 weeks practically. There was some talk of it. I mean, who are the sellers at this point? I think if I were to point a finger, Mr. Corey. I mean, if he loses this week, I wouldn't be surprised if he turns into a seller. And there is selling to be had here. There are some pieces that are great to pick up if he actually wants to sell. I mean, he could just end up chalking this season up to a bad season and working through it for next season, which is very reasonable in my opinion. He still does have J. Royce first. I assume he's probably not going to sell that at this point, unless he probably makes it out of the next like 3 weeks with like all wins. He's gonna have to basically win out. But Corey is interesting. I mean, the problem is a lot of the people at the top have no picks, so and they're not going to be trading starting players most likely. J. Roy, he's got 2 seconds over the next 2 years. First 3 years from now. Matt, as I pointed out, like no first, no seconds, besides like 3 years, 2 years out. Nobody loves getting a second like more than 2 years out. Chris has a first and a second next year. Maybe he can buy. But unless you want to package a player with like a second or something like that, Cody, a first this year, second next year, not much to work with there. Maybe somebody can take something 2 years out. Rough Riders, like I said, I could see him making some depth trade here. He's got 2 seconds, but like, there's not a lot of people with. I mean, the main holders of the nearest draft picks are me, Pajak, and Dave for the most part, and all three of us are not buyers. So I don't know what the trade market's going to look like, but I think Corey, if he ends up losing, could probably be the most acute seller to target or maybe ask him about. But yeah, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if Corey just says, yeah, no, fuck this year. I got unlucky. Shit's not going to happen next year. We're going to run it back. I mean, which, in my opinion, with this team would be reasonable. But yeah, that's the main of what we wanted to talk about here today. Hopefully you guys ended up. I didn't talk about the schedules for all the teams as much as I realized that I probably did when I was prepping, because I didn't find them all to be that important or that interesting. But yeah, a good overview, ideally, hopefully, of every team that is in the league, as well as their chances for playoffs, upcoming schedule, and projecting them out forward. And that's all, folks, as Bugs Bunny likes to say. But yeah, good luck to y'all out there, and may this upcoming 2 weeks be very interesting. All right, see y'all later. Bye.